Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back, and I'm going to be doing my first tutorial on layout. Now, these tutorials here are going to work slightly different from how they normally work. Just give layout here a little while to open up, unless it stopped responding, which it might have. Oh boy. Yep, that's broken. Alright. Nope, not responding. Alright, hello YouTube and welcome back to our tutorial. I'm going to be starting layout this time instead of modeler. And here it goes again. Oh, nope. Damn. Work this time. So, LightWave, was having a few hiccups earlier. It was crashing on me like non-stop. Alright. So it's a bit laggy, I think, because of Fraps and LightWave trying to freak out together. So I'm just for this set of tutorials, it's going to be different from what I did with my modeler ones. Speaking of which, if you've come to my channel for the first time and you have not seen my modeler videos, you may want to see them if you're new to LightWave, in which case you're welcome to probably click an annotation that'll appear somewhere on the screen. I don't know. I'll put it in there sooner or later, and it should bring you to the first video that I have done when it came to a modeler. Anyways, so when you open up a layout, it'll look possibly similar to this. It might look different. I'm just going to go over some of the basics on certain stuff. D is for display. It'll bring up your display preferences. So viewport, I generally go with 1 left and 3 right. So I have my camera view on my left. I have a top, a back, and I usually have a side, like a right maybe, and then back here on the right side of my my view here. And it's all pretty rudimentary from there. It's very similar to modeler in that sense. Go to File, Load, Load Object, or you can load a scene if you've made a previous scene. But I'm going to load an object. We are going to be loading up our box that we've created earlier. It's our little serial box that we created. Now it may look giant, but technically that would be because our camera is zoomed in on it. Because obviously if I move my camera far away, it's not going to look quite as big. I can also obviously take the scale of the box here and I can change it. You can cycle through the different modes using space. When moving the camera, or I'm kind of lost as to where to start off because I don't know how basic any of this really is. You can click on objects to select them, makes sense. Click on this light to select it. If you have trouble clicking on it through the camera view, you can click on it through one of these views. It's a lot easier. You can also click on the camera, and you can move the camera using the different viewports, or you can use the actual camera view to move it around. Holding down left click will allow you to change its trolley options, so you can move it left, right, up, and forward and back. Holding right click will move it up and down. If you press space, you'll enter orientation mode, and that will let you change its orientation, what direction it's facing. Holding down left click, if you hold down right click, it'll bank it, which is not usually that useful, but it has its uses. When it comes to objects, you can cycle through movement, just like the camera. Orientation, once again, just like the camera. And then you have size, so you can stretch it. you can stretch it this direction. And alright, so let's move this down a bit. And I'm just going to go over some basic movements and really how LightWave layout works in general, because it could be confusing at first. Just let me change a couple things. Yep. Alright, so it'll probably look a little bit more like this for you. Here I have all my keyframes. By default, it should go to 120, or it might go to 60. It depends on your settings, but I have it set to 120. Now I believe that is 4 seconds, and that also depends on your preferences. So press 0, or not 0, O. You can have anything selected, but press O and you go to General Preferences, and under here you have frames per second. Now by default I believe it's set to 25, and what that means is that for every 25 seconds or 25 frames you will have 1 second of footage. So it would be like, here's 0, then I move over to 25, that's 1 second, and then over to 50, that's another second, and so on and so on. I switch it to 30 because 30 is slightly smoother, and also 30 is the cap for YouTube. YouTube cannot go past 30, so it's pointless to go past this. So that'd be 1 second here, and then 1 second here, then 1 second here, and so on, so on, so on. So that's how that'll work. Under here you have frame number, but you can also switch it to time in seconds. So you'll see here 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, and 4 second. This is useful for when you want to know exactly how long things should be and how long your footage will be, while frame number gives you a little bit more detail. So by default I like to see how much time I have. So so what we're going to do is we're just going to do some basic camera movements just to show you how things work. So the way the system works is based off of keys. So each of these frames is a key, and there's a lot of them. And basically how it's going to work is, say if I have my camera here, and then 1 second later I have my camera over here. Now you'll see that it's generated a line. If you don't have this line, it's because your settings are not set up the way I have them set up. But it doesn't make any difference. It's just showing me that this line has been created. I can straighten it out if I wish. And there it's giving me a straight angle. So if I move back to 0, you'll notice I see the box again. If I move back to 1, it's gone. Well, what's happened is I've created 2 keys. Now the program will automatically fill in whatever is in between here. So if I scrub through slowly, you'll notice the camera simply moves on by. Now another thing that I can do is if I press space and go into orientation mode, I can say, well, when it reaches 1, let's turn the camera around to look at the back side of the box. So now my camera is doing this. Now what's happening is that for every movement I make on a blank key, it will place a key there. So let's say that box gets a bit out of frame here, a bit too much. So let's move this here a bit more, like that. There we go. There we go. Now we've got that. Now it stays within focus of the camera the entire time while the camera moves past. Of course, on a black background, what it'll actually look like is the box here will move past the camera and the camera remains focused on it. It's one of the tricks to 3D animation because it's got a back... Sorry there guys, Frap stopped recording because I pressed F9, which is to render a single frame. I feel like an idiot now. But because it's got a black background, it'll look like the box is moving. So that's how you work with keyframes. However, what if you were to say, well, I want to see, you know, I move this here, right? Actually, no, let's not do that. Let's do right about here. Let's say, okay, I want to move it here. Wait, that doesn't look very good. Nah, I don't want that. Well, hey, my camera still went up. Well, the reason why is because it's automatically placing the key there for every movement you make. So if you make a movement, it automatically places the key there. Now, I generally don't like that because if I want to do something, I want to make sure I have it rightly set up before it creates a key. In order to turn that off, just go down here where it says auto key and turn it to off. Now, in order to create a key, you have to actually take the object, move it into place, then press enter, then enter again, and you will have created the key. Now if you want to delete a key, you move the scrubber so it's over a key. You can see that it's not right now because there are no little key points there. But if I move it to the side, you see it lights up a bit and you can see that there's a key there. If I press delete and then press enter, I will delete that key. But let's keep it there just for demonstration. And there we have it move up like that. If we click play, we can see it in real time. And there we go, we have that. And that's basically it. For Modify, we have the same tools we have that we would have in Modeler. For Setup, we have slightly more complex stuff. We have Bones, which we'll be using to control characters later on. So that's all bone-based stuff. FX tools, which we'll be using in other things. We have fiber effects for hair or for trees, grass. Hypervoxels for special effects like smoke. Particles, which are tied to hypervoxels. Flocking, which we'll probably look into, but much later on. Forces, which we won't really be using because it's not exactly required as much anymore. Collision bodies, which we'll be looking at, and dynamic bodies, which we'll be looking at. We have bullet dynamics, which is all tied into the rest of this stuff. Then we have render. Now we can actually render our frame, so let's scrub through. Let's pick, let's say, right here. Let's say I want to render this frame. Render frame is right here, or F9 as the keyboard shortcut. I can't use the keyboard shortcut because that's the same as my record button. So if I press that, I stop recording. I accidentally did that. It was kind of stupid of me. So press that and we open up this. So this is the render screen. So it took me 0.8 seconds to render this frame, which is quick, undoubtedly. I can go to File and then save RGBA, and I can go to JPEG. Here's BMPs, JPEG, PNGs. PNG24 is the one you'll probably want to use most often, because PNG32 will not support transparencies, but PNG24 will, so I suggest PNG24s. So that's how you can actually save your renders. You can render the entire scene, which will render these out as a video, the entire thing, all 4 seconds. However, if you do that now, nothing will happen because we have to go to render globals, we have to go to output, we have to say save animation, and then we have to give it a place to save it. Now I'm not gonna do that, and then we have to select a type. AVI is pretty common. Options, and then full frames uncompressed is pretty good. It will take a little bit longer. It'll look perfect, but it will take a little bit longer, and the file size will be a bit bigger, but that's kind of a good default to go with if you want to anyways. Or you can also even save it as let's see, where is it? Should be able to save it as RGB right here. You can save it as RGB, which will allow you to save it as PNG 24, and you can actually create each individual frame as a picture, and there's a reason for that, and I'll get into that much later on. We have camera options, so under here we can change the resolution, so we can set it to 1280 by 720. Lens focal length, now I usually set it to 17 because 17 millimeters is the focal length of the human eye, so I set it to that. Under here we have minimum samples and maximum samples. What these are, this is the anti-aliasing. So let's see if I can get a good example of what aliasing looks like. That should be a pretty good example. Oh yeah, you can see it. Oh, whoops. Can I zoom in on this, please? I know I can. There it is. Now it's obviously lost quality, but anti-aliasing is this right here. These jagged edges that go down. That's what aliasing is, and anti-aliasing gets rid of that. So the more maximum samples you have here, so let's say 6, the more anti-aliasing you'll have. So if I actually switch that back to 1, I'll show you the comparisons. So render frame. Took me a few seconds. Let's actually zoom in on with the camera here. And then I want to press F9, but I know it'll shut off my recorder, and I don't want to do that. Oh yeah, if you kind of move your face in, you can see it big time. All those jagged edges going along there. Now if we zoom in, we can see it even more. Every one of those little jagged edges, we can get rid of those. So don't close this, but we can go to here. Let's crank it to 6 and render the frame again. It's going to take quite a bit longer, mostly because I've got my recorder going. But there we go. Now, with this selected, alright, you can probably tell the difference already, but this is the original frame. By the way, if you make multiple renders, you can switch between them by pressing page up and page down. But this is the original one, took 3.1 seconds. Mind you, I am recording fraps, that would normally take like a millisecond. And you can see all these horrible jagged edges going along the side. And the more objects you have, the more of these will appear, basically. And it's quite the ugly thing. Now, if I switch to the render that had 6 samples of anti-aliasing on it, we will get this. Now, you can see that it still has them, to some extent, but what it's done is it's blurred it. So if we go back to 100, we actually, yeah, no, 150, I think. No, 100, yeah. 100, and we switch to the original. If you move your face in and you really take a look, it's not going to work very well on YouTube because YouTube compresses the video file. But if you look in, you might be able to see the jagged edges going down, especially right here. I can see it pretty well. But if I switch to the other one, oh, even if I move my face in, I can barely see them. And that's because it's smoothed them off, and that's what sampling does. So that's your anti-aliasing. So you can have a minimum of like 6 and then a maximum of like 12. And you could crank this thing. If you do that, your render will take forever. So I don't recommend that, but you can if you want to. I mean, I'm not going to stop you. We have reconstruction filters, which are sort of it's a filter, so it kind of it's almost like an overlay, and basically if you apply Mitchell Soft, it will soften everything. It's a bit of an interesting idea. So if we render the frame now, actually no, let's abort it. Let's get rid of it. Just put classic, which is the generic one. Render the frame. Now it's not going to be too noticeable because it's a single object, but we should be able to see it. Go to Mitchell Soft, which is what I generally use. It'll take a bit longer, but 2.3 seconds for that. And wow, Mitchell Soft actually made it render faster, or my computer just sped up for a second. Yeah, you can see it. Okay, so I want you guys, it's sort of a form of anti-aliasing to an extent. Focus on the side of this O. So right now this is the original. There's nothing added to it, no anti-aliasing, nothing. And when I switch to the one that has Mitchell Soft, you'll see that it gets blurred all along here. And it's same with the edge here, it all gets blurred. It's pretty quick, might be a little bit unnoticeable, but when you have a lot of objects, it becomes pretty important, and it does look pretty nice. So that's one of those things. And it's pretty quick too for a level of anti-aliasing. Sampling pattern, you don't have to worry about. You can set it to classic. It'll slow down your render a bit, but I wouldn't worry about that too much. Adaptive sampling, leave that as it is. I'm not 100% sure what that would do. A soft filter is similar to the reconstruction filter. Threshold and oversample are more so used for grainy stuff, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. Motion effects, we have motion blur, which we can't really use because our camera is actually not moving that fast. Stereoscopic rendering for 3D glasses, because, well, this is a 3D program, so it has this ability. Depth of field. Depth of field is when your camera goes out of focus and everything in the background blurs, or it goes further out of focus and everything in the foreground blurs. We have global illumination and radiosity. This is slightly more advanced stuff, so I won't get into that because it's a bit pointless right now. By default, you might have all of this turned off. If you do, turn most of it on. Turn on shadows, turn on transparency, reflection, refraction, and render lines. You don't need instances, at least not yet. We might need that later though, if I ever do an instances tutorial. We have depth buffer, AA, so it's going to buffer the anti-aliasing. It's going to make it a bit more efficient, but it's going to slow down the render, of course. Ray trace occlusion, which is a light-based occlusion. Occlusion is sort of it's a bit of a complex thing to explain. I'm a bit tired because once again I'm recording at like 3 a.m. in the morning, so I'll have to explain that in a different video, especially once we actually get into it. We have use Z buffer min max. Won't worry about that. Rake recursion limit. Don't worry about that. Just leave these as they are. You can change shading samples if you want, or light samples. I wouldn't recommend it because it seems to be fine the way it is. Light intensity, flare intensity, wouldn't worry about those because we have better settings later on. We have lens flares, so if you turn this off, it'll turn off all the lens flares in your scenes. Lens flares are generally something you want, but if you don't want them, then don't have them. Shadow maps are a type of map, or not map, shadow that this program uses. It's sort of a sort of pre-cached shadow, because the way LightWave works is it will calculate the light, so it calculates the light in real time. So shadow maps are a way to sort of cheat, if you will. Noise reduction, which will reduce noise grain, which we may encounter later on, so that might become useful. Volumetric lights, we won't get into volumetric lights until much later because those are a bit complex. Two-sided area lights, we won't get into that because area lights are a bit of a pain in the ass. Dynamic range, we won't get into. HDR filtering, we won't get into either because HDRs are a bit more complex, and also we won't need filtering for them. Multi-threading, I set this to 64 threads because it's sort of the fastest you can go. For some people, that it goes faster if you set it to lower things, but what this will do is it will render your scene faster based on this setting. So multi-threading is just using the amount of CPUs you have. So if you have a dual core, you know, I might recommend something like 6 threads, or maybe 3. If you have a quad core, it depends on the speed as well, of course, but if you have a quad core, you could probably go up to 16, maybe 24. I just set it to 64 because I'm like, screw it, I might as well just push my computer as far as I can. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, whatever. And it renders pretty darn fast. Anyways, by default, you're going to have a frame end beep. Please turn that off. It's annoying. It really is. You can have that if you want, but it's a bit pointless. Auto frame advanced, you don't need. But just leave it as is. Leave this all as default. What else? It's set to perspective camera. We have advanced cameras, classic cameras, a lot of different types of cameras for people who actually know what they're doing. Personally, I don't, but for people who actually have, you know, Canon cameras and actually have a working knowledge of all the different types of cameras, they can use these, but personally I just stick with perspective. It works for me. It's done. We have our light, and the type of light is currently set to distant. We have area, dome, firelight, linear, non-gone, or whatever, photometric, point, spherical, and spotlight. I also have these SK skylights because of a plugin I downloaded. So if you don't have that, don't worry. Now you can see our light here. Now the type of light that we have is a distant light. To get this menu, I selected the light and then I pressed P for properties, and it's currently a distant light. Now the thing about a distant light is it sort of acts like a sun, if you will, in that the position of it does not matter. I can move this all over the place and you'll notice that the shadow on here is not changing. The reason why is because this position does not matter. What matters is its orientation. So if I take this and I start changing the orientation, the shading on the box will change. And of course I've got lens flares and volumetric lights. Now, you'll notice that I can actually see my lens flare under my camera view. If you would like to see it, press O for preferences, and then somewhere in here, under display, under display, go down to the bottom, OpenGL lens flares, and that'll let you see the lens flares in OpenGL. You also have OpenGL fog, but I haven't used fog yet. I'm not too interested in it. You can crank this pretty high up, dependent on your graphics card and CPU. If you're experiencing lots of lag, crank this down. It'll remove certain polygons, but it will run a bit faster. Leave all this as it is. I don't know what it does. I don't care. Grid square size, make this lower if you want to, and you will deal with more detail. Now, in other words, I can move my camera, for example. Let's get this camera real close here. If I go to display 2 meters, and then I start moving it towards my box, you'll see the box sort of starts disappearing. Now, that's not because my camera is going inside the box, but that's because my camera is the grid square size is so big that when my camera gets close, it's not clipping into it, but it appears to be clipping into it. So if I go up to this and it starts disappearing like that, I go to 1 meter, it's gone. Keep on moving closer. Go to 500 millimeters, it's gone. Go closer. So it just lets you move with a bit more detail. I generally stick to 1 meter. It seems to work pretty well. But it depends on the size of your objects as well. So if we take a quick render of this frame, oh, don't want to do that. Nope, stop it. There's our little lens flare. There's our box. And of course, we can take our lens flare and we can change its options by going to the lens flare options. We can make it fade off screen, which is on by default. We kind of want that because that's a bit nice. We can make it fade behind objects. We can make it glow behind objects, which we don't use that much. We have a central glow, which we don't really want or need, but it depends on your preference, really. Get rid of that, rid of that. We have random streaks, which are these little streaks coming off of it. We can turn those on and off. We have anamorphic streaks, which is one of the things that we want. So an anamorphic streak is the blue streak that goes across. Games have them, as you can see right there. That's an anamorphic streak. If we change the color of the light, the color of the anamorphic streak will change. We have star filters. So if we go 4 plus 4, and we go render frame, now we have little star points coming off of it. We have reflections. So if we go lens reflections, you can see the lens reflections in here. LightWave's lens reflections kind of suck, so I wouldn't recommend using them, but there you have basic lens reflections. You can sort of change what they are. Can change them to polygon. Render frame. You can try and play around with lens reflections. I don't use these anymore because they're not very nice looking anymore. Give it random streaks again. Give it a central glow. Just give it everything. There you have a nice little lens flare there. It's not the greatest, but it's a basic lens flare. You don't have to worry about it too much. Let's give the actual light a different color then. Let's give it a warmer color. Kind of like a sun. But anyway, so that's the basics of layout and how certain things work. From here on out, I will no longer be doing tutorials like I did with a modeler. Instead, I'm going to be doing little things. So like, ooh, fiber effects. Let's do fiber effects. And then I will do, okay, hypervoxels. Let's do hypervoxels. So I'm going to be doing each individual thing instead of doing a sort of here's this, here's this, here's this, you know, kind of going down the list. I'm just going to be doing random bits and pieces and cool things and neat things that will help you with your animation, basically. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the video so far. Please stick with distant lights. You can try spotlights, but spotlights and distant lights, stay away from dome lights. They just stay away from them, all right? Because you're certainly not ready. If you're watching this video, you're certainly not ready to use them yet. But distant lights and spotlights, maybe pretty simple, pretty basic. And hope you guys have enjoyed the watching the video so far. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys sooner or later. And this has been the Guardian signing out. Well, actually, speaking of which, I almost forgot. I'm tired, so leave me alone. I almost forgot. A friend of mine had asked, can I actually see the works that you've made? And I'd be happy to show you guys. So let me hopefully launch layout without it crashing on me. Come on. Come on. This is all going into the video. I'm certainly not gonna skimp out and not show bloopers. Oh, fuck. It stopped responding, didn't it? Alright. So I'll be back once I get this thing working again. Those stupid bastards. Of course, the second I press F9, it starts working again. Alright, so we're back. Let's move this up, move this down. Oh, whoops, not that. Display. Actually, we only need the camera. So I'm going to try loading some objects. If it does not work, sorry. Alright, so let's see what we've got here. We have full characters. Let's try loading our female character. She might crash the program. As a word of warning. Oh, there she is. Ooh. Her clothing is not finished. I was a pretty big amateur when I textured her clothing, so I didn't quite know what I was doing when it came to texturing. So there's my character. Whoop, I keep on doing that. She is a high polygon model. She is, I believe, over 70,000 polygons, roughly around there. She is currently in non-subpatched mode. That's why her hands look very jaggedy. So if I go to Surface Editor here, and she's on smoothing, but I have to switch it to switch it to the proper thing. Where is it? Where is it? If only I could remember. Render, view, modeler tools. Ah, there it is. So toggle subpatch. You can see it rounded off a bit. Select her body as a whole, toggle subpatch. Now here's where my computer will slow down because it's a lot of polygons and it's quite heavy on my system like this. But you can see just how intense it gets, yeah. So get rid of the sub patch there. Get rid of the sub patch. It just lets my computer run a bit smoother. So there's my female character. I just recently placed in the eyes. So the eyes are a new addition. They're actually they're named separately. So if we go to display here and let's switch it to 100 millimeters. It's a fairly large object, as it turns out. So if we move in close to our eyes here, I'm quite proud of the eyes because there's something I haven't quite I've never textured before, and it was surprisingly really well done compared to what I expected from it. So let's go back to modeler tools. Let's not that. Let's go to here and toggle our subpatch mode. And let's go to render and render our single frame. So there we go, a render of her skin here. I added some blush to her by using a color vertex map. I also added some darkness around her eyes using a color vertex map, just for added detail. Go back to modeler tools. Let's get rid of that. All right. So that's that character in working condition. Let's clear our scene, shall we? Now the next character I'm going to be loading, I'm a bit worried about loading because it's high polygon and my computer does not like it, and I don't know how it's going to react while recording. So this is another character. It's going to be part of a upcoming series that I'm going to be starting. It's going to star that female character you just saw, and this is going to be one of her sort of enemies. I've got actually two clipping into each other here. Not sure exactly as to why. I'll have to... I've got three, I think. Huh. Let's start killing them. There you go, back to one. So this is the monster. I actually built this from the ground up. I had absolutely no pictures to work off of. I had nothing to work off of. I did this from my mind alone, and I just kept on modeling and I kept on going. Statistics, it has over what is that, 115,000 polygons? Yep. Something like that. It's really well detailed. All of these spikes are tessellated. Its feet have little grooves in them. The only thing I have left for it is to texture it, and that's going to be quite the pain in the ass, honestly. It's got these little tube-based things going along its side. I'm not sure what they are. And none of this I really know what it is, but it looks cool. It's something I just made off the top of my head. If we click on it here and we go modeler tool subpatch, we subpatch it here. Oh, it was subpatched. Never mind. So this is it in subpatched mode. I thought it was smoother than this. It might just be that it's yeah, it's not actually set to smooth. So let's smooth it. There we go. So it's set to smooth, and as you can see, my computer slowed down for a second there. It's got a groove on its back. Sort of the thing about this monster is I know I didn't have to worry about things like that. You can see a bit of a graphical glitch there, a little bump there. Same with that area as well, and on the legs too. The reason why I'm not worried about that is because in the animations, these things are never really going to be focused on the camera. They're not going to be, well, they are, but they're not as well. They're pretty much a creature that's going to be moving constantly, so it's not going to be noticeable from a distant. And when it's up close, it's going to be moving so fast and blurred that it's not really going to matter that much. But so that's my monster. Let's clear the scene. Load up our next set of objects. Now there's this scene or object that might actually lead to the crashing of this computer because this program, and that's this. And the reason why is because it does push it sort of past its point, because it's got a ton of textures, it's got lots of polygons. It's something I've been working on for a while now, and what I've been trying to do with it is I wanted realism, so I wanted photorealism out of it, and I've been doing all right with it, and it's led me to believe that I'm ready to actually start my my series. And there it is. Just gave it a few seconds there. So this is a scene that I've been developing for a little while now, and it's not very complex. It's a pretty basic scene. Let's go 1 meter. Let's move our camera in. We can take a quick render of this. I don't want to stay on this scene for too long because it's crashed quite often. Let's take a quick render. And in this scene, I use bump maps, I use specularity maps, I use transparency maps, I use everything. And I've done pretty well with it, actually. I'd say that looks fine to me. It's not great, you know. I'm only one animator. I can only do so much, really. Let's take a look at our building here. I don't like this thing here. Ignore it at all costs. Its texture is not what I wanted it to be, but I had to roll with it at the time. So let's increase the resolution of this just to get something a bit nicer looking than what we have. So let's get a 1280 by 720 going. A lens focal length of 17, and let's move our camera in quite a lot so we don't get any of the gray building parts. Let's move it up against here. You can see that some of the wood is disappearing, so I have to go display. Let's go 500 millimeters. And let's turn it inward a bit like that. Now let's render frame. Alright, so that's what I've called the house. And as you can see, it's all high resolution textures. And I've shown these textures before. I had them in, oh, I'm running out of space, so I'm gonna have to stop pretty soon here. I had them under here, and then textures, and you can see just how high resolution they are. 5080 by 5080, so they're all fairly high resolution texture. 3297 by 3150, And anyways, I have to stop here because I'm running out of time. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching the videos. This is just a couple of the things I've been working on. I have a lot more, but I'm running out of space. So hope you guys have enjoyed the video so far. Please do tune in for more. This is The Guardian, signing out. Oh, whoops, wrong button.